Hey everyone, Eric here. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Chris Sims, founder and CEO of Lazy Dog, a very successful restaurant chain with a unique twist. Listen to his story from growing up in an entrepreneurial family to starting his own restaurant that now has over 40 locations across the country.
I figured I would put it in your ball court, though, first and foremost, and just let you talk a little bit more about, your upbringing, where you're from. Yeah, just introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Hey, no, absolutely. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Lazy Dog Restaurants. Grew up in Southern California in the Los Angeles area. Went to college in upstate New York. Went to the Cornell Hotel School. I fell in love with the business like really early on. My first job was when I was 14 years old, and I was running the snack bar at the local country club up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I fell in love with, the ability to be able to make people happy with food and drink.
Yeah.
From there, I then started washing dishes at a local kind of really nice restaurant up there called Snake River Grill, and then worked my way up through the kitchen. And then when I graduated Cornell, I went to work for P.F. Chang's China Bistro as a manager. And, at the time there was only 6 P.F. Chang's, which completely dates me. So, but, I got to see what a successful national restaurant concept looks like, kind of from an early age or from an early stage in life. And some of the incredible cultural aspects to the business that they had, and their commitment to quality, and it was such a great experience. And so spent about 3 years with them, and then went and worked with my dad at Mimi's Cafe for about a year, and got to learn about real estate and construction, and opened up a few restaurants for Mimi's, and
Nice.
really learned about how they did business. A lot of the same foundations as P.F. Chang's. I think there's definitely a common recipe there to successful restaurant brands.
Framework.
Yeah, exactly. There's a successful framework there. And so when I was done with Mimi's, I started Lazy Dog. It's been an incredible, 20 years since I started working on Lazy Dog, 18 years since we started the first restaurant. We've grown to 39 restaurants across the country.
Wow.
And have 1 or 2 more this year, and then probably about 8 more next year. So
That's awesome.
it's really, it's so exciting to see your baby grow up and become.
I imagine. Yeah.
I think it's probably a strong adolescent right now, and
Sure.
but it's just incredible to see your dream come true.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, we have a couple of Lazy Dogs out here in Las Vegas as well, and a ton of them in California, which I would imagine it's where it originated in SoCal, right?
Yes, yeah, we started our first one in Huntington Beach, California, and we have a couple of there in Las Vegas, and oh my goodness, we have just been embraced by the Las Vegas
Oh yeah.
market. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's only going to get crazier too with everything opening up again. On actually just a few days ago, we opened up back at 100% capacity. So I'd imagine your revenue numbers are going to go up as a result of that. So
no doubt about that one.
that's pretty awesome. No, good for you. That's crazy to start a restaurant and then have over 39 locations. That's insane. And scaling that there must have been a lot of challenges with that. But where exactly did that entrepreneurial spirit come from? Is that something that you just kind of were born with? Or I read that your father was also in the restaurant business too. Do you mind elaborating a little bit on that?
Yeah, I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. My great grandfather was an entrepreneurial hotel and restaurant guy in Chicago, and then my grandfather moved out to Southern California and started up his own chain of coffee shops. And then my dad came along and started Mimi's Cafe, and then I came along and started Lazy Dog. So I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is in the blood or if it's just in the upbringing. But
Seems like it.
my dad. I know. Yeah, my dad. I was raised to have confidence and in my abilities, and to take kind of calculated risks. It's kind of like no matter what hurdles are thrown at you, I was born, or I was raised with the grit that it takes to make things happen, and to kind of see a task through. And that is, God, that is the epitome of being an entrepreneur, because nobody really makes it easy to be an entrepreneur. It is, the path to being an entrepreneur is really laden with hurdle after hurdle after hurdle.
Yes.
And you just have to, you have to use your creativity and your will to get through them, or get around them.
Yeah, I would imagine you'd have to. I mean, being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. That's for sure. You have to have certain personality traits in order to endure some of those hurdles that you had just mentioned. What sacrifices did you have to make in order for you to be an entrepreneur? Because I'm not sure that, with this recent wave of new entrepreneurs and like the glamour, and I don't think that a whole lot of people really understand the type of time and commitment that it takes in order for you to be an entrepreneur. So can you walk through some of the sacrifices that you've had to make?
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is really, I mean, it's basically blending your life and your work together. Right. There's really no clear definition. There's no definition. There's no difference between personal life and work, because it's just all the same. Mm-hmm. When you're when you're an entrepreneur and you're starting up a business, you're pretty much on call all the time.
Right.
No matter what, because when you're starting out, you're the only one responsible. Right. And hopefully you've been able to put together a great team of people, mm-hmm. That are helping you achieve your goals. But at the end of the day, you don't have a boss. You are the only one. You're the one. You're the final decision maker, and mm-hmm. so you're on call all the time. And
right. You have nobody
and so they're
fall back on either, I would imagine.
No, you really don't. And so you have to love what you do. And I think that's one of the most important things about being an entrepreneur, is that you pick something that you love. For me, I love the restaurant business. And so therefore it has just been easy for me to be on all the time, because mm-hmm. I love it. I wake up and I eat it and I sleep it and I breathe it. And it's the best thing ever.
No, I mean, it has to be if you're going to devote essentially your entire life to it. The work-life balance, there really is no work-life balance. Your work is your life. And you also, I mean, obviously family comes first, right? But I would imagine,
definitely,
especially in the restaurant business itself, no one's going to run your business like you. Yeah. My grandma, she had a Mexican restaurant in Redwood City. And it was just so taxing on her to just even have one location. I can't even imagine having 40. So that's kudos to you.
It's so difficult. And you're right, that work, the work family balance is obviously really difficult. I mean, you basically spend all of your free time, taking care of your family and being with your kids, and
yeah.
And so that's kind of it. It's like family and work, and that's what you do.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot of time for social life, huh?
No.
That makes sense. No, I appreciate you elaborating on that. The other thing I wanted to ask you, just taking a step back again, was where exactly you found the inspiration for Lazy Dog, because I think that there's something very unique about your restaurant in the sense that you're very dog friendly. I mean, you even have a menu for the pets. Do you mind elaborating on that?
Yeah. It was funny. I never thought it would be that difficult to find a name for your restaurant or for your business. I think we actually had easier times naming our children. I knew what I wanted to do when it came to the menu. I wanted there to be great scratch cooking, super high quality. I wanted the menu to be, partially these craveable classics and this comfort food that people could really rely on, and that would be craveable. It'd be so good, but it'd be approachable. Mm-hmm. And then I also wanted there to be this incredibly creative side of the menu where I got to push people's limits, and get them to try things they had never tried before. Mm-hmm. And so the menu was kind of almost the easy part for me. What was difficult was figuring out what did I need to wrap this menu? What did I need to wrap around this menu? And so we wanted it to be very authentic. I felt like a lot of the restaurant chains at the time uh, had become very inauthentic. You know, they almost contrived. And so, you know, I in talking about the concept, I always said, God, you know, this thing, it's got to be authentic. It's got to be real. And so we went back to the place that was, you know, one of my favorite places on earth, a place that I had grown up during summers at since I was 7 years old, and that was Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And you know, and so that was kind of the basis for the concept, you know, going into it. And so as we were thinking about the name, we were sitting in Jackson Hole, and we're like, okay, so the decor is going to be Jackson Hole. The menu is going to be this incredible, you know, combination of comfort and innovation. What are we going to name it? And my parents' dog was sitting there by the fire, and my dad and I were sitting there kind of throwing names back and forth. and all of a sudden the Lazy Dog, you know, popped up. And I said, God, Dad, you know, what do you think about the Lazy Dog? You know, this is pretty interesting. You know, we wanted people to come in and leave all their worries at the door and really come in and relax and just enjoy time with their loved ones and their friends, or have, you know, have a great business meeting uninterrupted. Sure. And really kind of like nourish the connections with the people that they were around and that they cared about. And, you know, I mean, what better way than to let people, you know, let a person just come in and be a lazy dog. And so the Lazy Dog name kind of stuck. And next thing you know, we were opening up our first restaurant with the name on the door. And we hadn't really thought about catering to dogs yet. We just,
interesting.
You know, we just love dogs. I mean, we'd grown up with dogs, and so one of the first few days that we were open, a lady came in and she had her dog with her, and she said, you know, I'd love to sit out on the patio with my dog. And so the hosts came up to me and said, you know, I don't even know, are we allowed to do this? And fortunately, amazingly so, the Orange County Health Department had a big table right in the middle of the restaurant. You know, obviously they were impressed with our cleanliness, and they had come in to have lunch. And so I walked right up to our health inspector and said, hey, I've got a lady who really wants to eat with her dog. Is that okay? And the lady, the health inspector said, you know what, that's perfectly fine. Just, you know, keep them off the chair, off the table, blah, blah, blah. And so I was able to go back and invite this lady with her dog onto the patio. And that was really the first time that it dawned on us that there was this ability to cater towards, you know, the other furry children in the family. And so that's when we started putting together a little dog menu where they could feed their dog, and obviously you put some rules around it. But that was really the birth. There's no intention in the beginning of having dogs on the patio, but it was one of those lucky occurrences that happened that really sparked a heck of a fun thing that people can do at that Lazy Dog.
That's interesting. I always just assumed that the name and the dog menu kind of came simultaneously. Just based on, I mean, it being called Lazy Dog, right? But your story would suggest otherwise. So that's
cool. I think that's one of the most, you know, that's one of the most important things about being an entrepreneur, opening up a new business, is that you're open to new ideas, and whether those new ideas come from your customers or your guests or your teammates or your vendors or your investor. I mean, there are great ideas coming from all different directions, but if you don't have your ears open and are willing to contemplate what those ideas could do for your business, then you're really shortchanging yourself.
Yeah, well, just being open-minded to pivoting, right?
Yep, the last year has taught us that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The amount of pivoting that everybody's done just to survive has been incredible, and so yeah, it's a huge lesson in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I would imagine COVID was the biggest pivot you've probably ever had to take. So, and you're probably not alone in that one.
No, it was kind of exciting. You know, I know I can't believe I'm using the word exciting, but it was really interesting to go back to the entrepreneurial roots. You know, as we've grown the company, you know, obviously, you know, I'm not the only one in it anymore. You know, I'm not the only decision maker. And now You know,
Sure.
we've got these incredible teams of people that are helping us every single day,
Right.
and needless to say, I've been able to find a little more definition between work and life balance.
Oh, that's awesome.
Uh, but the pandemic was really interesting in the fact that it pulled me right back into those original entrepreneurial roots,
Hmm.
and we were making decisions on the fly. We were working 7 days a week, hours and hours, hours and hours and hours, and doing some really cool stuff in the meantime. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I mean, I definitely did want to spend a little bit more time on how you addressed the COVID situation. I mean, seeing that a huge part of your business was the ability to sit outside, sit in the patio with your dog, and then having the government shut down outdoor seating, specifically in California, and that's where most of your locations are. So I wanted to hear like what that was like how revenue was impacted, and how you were able to bounce back from that.
Yeah, I mean, it was God, we hit some very deep, some very very deep depths, and some very high, high incredible heights. We within about a week, I think we saw our revenues drop by like 90%. I
Oh
mean,
my,
it was crazy, and so it made us step back and renew our commitment to our culture and our brand values. And we said, okay, you know what? Here's what we believe in, and so therefore we're going to use these values to make sure that we're making the right decisions through the next however long is this thing's going to last. And so we made as many good decisions for all of our people as we possibly could. We kept we communicated, just trying to keep people up to speed with what was going on. Obviously there was tons of doubt and tons of fear.
right.
um, and then we really listened to our guests and our teammates. I mean, we had pretty much every great idea that came out of Lazy Dog and during that time came from our teams. And whether that was in the beginning, we were doing the pantry kits because we knew that all of our guests couldn't even get toilet paper at the grocery store. And so lo and behold, our team in Cypress, Texas, they started packaging up toilet paper and some essentials and selling it to the local
Wow.
community.
No way.
I know, and it really worked. And so we heard that on one of the calls as we were over communicating, and so lo and behold, we started doing it across the company. And I mean, we sold millions of dollars worth of pantry
Are
kits.
you serious?
Uh,
That's crazy.
yeah, and what was fantastic about it was it started to cement our relationship with the communities. It really strengthened that relationship because um, we were giving people something that they couldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then that was just the start. We then started the friends and family meals, where we were donating food to the local communities. When our guests bought these very affordable meals made for five people, made for a family, we knew that people wanted freshly cooked food and for their families, and it had to be affordable. And so we created those and sold a ton of those, and gave away tens of thousands of meals in the communities. And then we moved on to TV dinners, and we
Right.
knew that people were at home. They didn't necessarily want to keep ordering out for
Mhm.
takeout. They wanted something they could cook at home, and the TV dinners have been a huge success.
Yep.
And then we started Jolene's, our virtual wing and beer concept, knowing that again, people were at home, they were looking for something different, and this was our opportunity to introduce Lazy Dog to a whole nother group of younger guests through the Jolene's brand. So it was boy, I mean, it was changing daily, but by listening to our teammates, by listening to our guests, we were able to pivot pretty quickly on a lot of different fronts
Yep.
and give people what they needed.
That's crazy. Millions of dollars in pantry items. That's like that's an awesome pivot, especially because these people like really needed it. There was literally like no toilet paper, no antibacterial lotion, like nothing in these stores. And a restaurant turns around and starts putting together compilate or I guess a pantry of all the items that are essential to households that they're not able to get in person. Especially like people are like literally like running or like jumping over each other to get to Costco quickly.
No, I mean, what I learned was that basically the supply chain for the grocery stores was different than the supply chain for the restaurants. And so while the grocery store supply chain was out of all this stuff, this is the restaurant supply chain had shut down basically. So they had warehouses filled with everything.
Wow.
And so we were able to help get that supply out of those warehouses and into the hands of the people that needed them.
Right. Man, I wish that my mom knew that, because my mom, she works for a preschool, and she would have to go to Costco every now and then and buy these items in bulk. And she was getting so many dirty looks from the because it was just her, so they just kind of assumed that she was hoarding everything. But it wasn't for her. It was for the kids. So
it's for the kids. All right. I know you only want to wear a sign or something like that to explain it to everybody.
Yeah. I'm not a bad person. I swear. That's awesome. No, that's a great story, from how you started the company to how you were able to pivot, 18 years, you said it was 18 years that you've been in business, or more?
It's going to be 18 years in August.
Yeah. So you've been in business for 18 years, and you still have the capacity to make a pivot like that during a very challenging time that COVID has put us in. So
yeah, well, you really get to see the strength of your team. I mean, that was the probably the shining thing that I got to see during this pandemic was how incredibly the teams came together, collaborated together, and achieved unbelievable things because of that collaboration and because of that teamwork. So I could not thank my team enough for everything that they gave and what we accomplished.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. And you've like, as you mentioned, you've probably cemented a great relationship with future customers because of the fact that they came to you for those essential items, and now they're going to probably be coming back for food very soon here when things start opening up to full capacity. Now, you are like, as I mentioned, most of your locations are in California. So like, what is the protocol for that? Like, what's it like to be actually reopening again? Do you guys still have to wear masks inside? Because I know it's different for each state, and Vegas is probably less concerned than California.
That is that is a great question. Every state's different, every city is different, every county is different. I mean, it's pretty crazy trying to keep up with the regulations, because everything is just different across the country. So our plan is basically, our regional operations directors keep a very close eye on what the cities and counties and states are doing for their restaurants, and then they let us know what's acceptable. In California, we're still at kind of reduced capacities, but I think as of the middle of June, we're going to be able to go to 100%. I hope. But then you have other states like I think Colorado's at 100%. Texas is at 100%. So some have definitely opened up quicker than others. The mask issue is another puzzle. I think they're still trying to figure out whether they're going to require masks or not for teammates. I think for guests, some things have eased here and there, but yeah, we're trying to keep our finger on the pulse as best as we can. And ultimately the goal is let's make sure that we comply with whatever regulations there are, and let's just keep the teammates' well-being and the guests' well-being at the forefront.
Yeah, well, that's all you can do, right? Just do your best to follow the guidelines and regulations, and hope that they're backed by science and not by political ideology, right?
Yep, no, without a doubt.
Yeah, ultimately that's the most important thing. So no, I appreciate you elaborating on that. That was pretty awesome. Well, pretty awesome to hear how you pivoted there. Another question that I had though was really when did you feel like you needed to start scaling? Because you had that first restaurant and you've grown it to nearly 40 locations at this point. Like, when did you say, okay, like it's time to expand?
I opened up the first restaurant with the dream of expanding. That was my grand plan. But I also knew that before I built a second Lazy Dog, we had to make sure that the first Lazy Dog worked.
Sure.
And so, we spent probably a good year working on the first Lazy Dog, making sure that it was profitable like we had hoped, making sure that the menu was the right size and we had the right dishes, and that we really refined all of the pieces to the experience and to the concept. And then we started looking for a second one, and we opened up our second restaurant about 3 years after the first one. And then we opened up our third one, oh God, about 3 or 4 months after that. So
that was pretty quick.
Then it was pretty quick. Yeah. And so then you have to learn how to run multiple restaurants, because that's a whole nother art.
I'd imagine so.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole nother thing to run multi-unit. And so we spent then another year figuring out how to run multi-unit restaurants. Okay. And then started looking again for real estate. And then once we opened up our fourth restaurant, and our fifth restaurant, we then started just a nice steady cadence. And the reason why, one of the reasons why I really enjoyed that and made that a priority was because we had incredible people. We had very high potential people working for us. And I wanted to make sure that there was enough opportunity for them to grow into new positions and progress in their career. Okay. I'm a firm believer that if a restaurant becomes stagnant, the top talent starts leaving, and you want to make sure that you have the best possible people working for you, so that obviously the guest experience is the best, and they kind of feed each other. So that's why I wanted to continue growing. At the same time, I didn't want to grow too fast, because I didn't want the quality of the guest experience and the quality of the people in the business to decline.
Yeah.
So, I always told the team, I said, guys, we'll keep growing as long as the quality of our guest experience keeps growing. And so I want to improve the guest experience every year, and the teammate experience. But at the same time, I want to grow the company. And right. So that those two for me were very connected. I had seen over and over again these companies that just expanded way too fast. Their operations went downhill, and next thing you know, they were filing bankruptcy. And that I didn't want to go down that road.
No. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to find the right balance, right, between growth and also customer satisfaction, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's like it's you're absolutely right. Which then leads to same store sales growth, which is that kind of year over year sales growth, which is shows a lot of health of the business.
Right, and you got to maintain your clientele, right? You have a lot of people that probably come multiple times a year, or even multiple times a month. Right. So got to make sure that the customer experience is the same as it was when they came the previous time, or better. Right.
Yeah. The restaurant business is tough because, not all people are vocal about, being disappointed. And so, you can very quickly see sales decline and nobody says anything about it, but they just decide not to come anymore. Right. And that's the worst case scenario, is when somebody just is disappointed to the fact that they just don't come anymore, but then they don't say anything either.
Right.
So yeah, it's so important to just realize that you're really only as good as the last hamburger you sell.
Right. Yeah, because you'd have nothing to attribute the reason why they aren't coming back. It's just they just kind of ghosted you, right? They just disappeared.
Yeah, I know. It's basically it's the restaurant version of being ghosted.
Yeah. Pretty much.
You're like, hey, wait a minute.
What would you say is like one of the biggest challenges that you experienced when you were growing, or just overall hurdles in general?
I would say there's a couple of things. It's very interesting. When you start your first restaurant, that's definitely the hardest one. I think that, when you start the first restaurant, in order, as I said before, in order to provide the guest experience that you need to have the quality of the people in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to have the quality of people, you have to have a great restaurant. And so
Sure.
it's like the chicken, like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It's pretty interesting as an entrepreneur. You end up having to really convince people to leave their perfectly stable jobs wherever they are and come join you on this journey. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's not easy, because you're convincing these people to believe in your dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so that first one is really tough, because you have to, you really have to be able to do that. The same goes for the investors, because you got to go out and raise money, and
Sure.
you have to go convince all of these investors that your dream is feasible and that it's going to produce the return that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think probably the hardest thing for me was convincing the landlords that, your dream was feasible and that it would fit perfectly in their building, or in their concept. So, as I said, like, you have to have a lot of grit, and you have to have the ability to communicate your dream, so that all of these different people will believe you, and will then invest in you, or join you, or
Right.
or let you take their space. So there's so many challenges in the beginning, but if you can get all of those things right, then it really starts, you really start getting some momentum.
Right. No, interesting. That sounds a lot like the startup space. I mean, you have to be a visionary, and you also have to be able to sell your dream, right?
Yep.
Like, it's not just, I mean, you can have the best idea in the world. If you're not able to pitch that to a group of investors, and you're not able to go anywhere with that, right? So
Yep.
you must have been
absolutely.
You must have been able to communicate that relatively effectively if you now have 40 restaurants, but at least initially, like, that must have been challenging for you to do, huh?
Incredibly difficult. Yeah, that's why, one of the pieces of advice, one of the biggest, I think one of the most important pieces of advice I give people who come to me and they ask me, what they should do, now that they want to open up a restaurant.
What do I do?
They're like, what do I do? I want to open up my own restaurant. And I say, you know what? You need to go work for a successful business that's doing something similar to what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, really? But no, I'm going to waste a year. I'm like, oh, no. You're not going to waste a year. This is going to be the most valuable year that you have ever spent. And you know what? If you got the time, spend 2 years, because it's twice as valuable.
Yep.
Because in order for you to open up a successful business or have a startup, you need to understand what it's supposed to look like.
Sure.
And by having some experience in a successful company, you now have a model that you can look at and say, oh, all right, so this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
Now, so not only is that the case, you also get to meet the people who are going to be your eventual, coworkers and partners, and the people that that you're going to sell the dream to come work for you.
Yep.
And then on top of that, when you put that company on your resume and you explain to your investors what you've learned and how you're applying those things to your new business, the investors believe you. And so, like, there's this 3-prong value to going and doing that and spending that extra year or two, going through that education. And so I go, and then even more importantly, you learn whether you learn whether you even like to do it or not.
Yeah. What if you don't start it?
That's half the battle.
Yeah. What if you don't love it? I mean, you got to love the restaurant industry, like you said, in order to be successful within that specific industry, right?
If you go work for that company and you don't like what you're doing, I promise you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it when you open up your own. So
right.
it's important that you have that experience.
Your experience at PF Chang's and at Mimi's, I mean, you mentioned it earlier in the call, but they had like some overlapping features in terms of like the framework that made them successful, and you were able to essentially duplicate that to an extent and then add your own twist, obviously with the dog component. But I mean, you had that framework to begin with, and that's something that I think a lot of people should take away is, look at the successful people, the people that have done well for themselves, and you could just literally copy their framework or just like mirror it to an extent, right?
It's a foundation. I kind of think about it as a foundation. It's you're learning what the right foundation looks like, and then you get to build your own house on top of that foundation. But without the foundation, you get no house.
Yep.
And so, you literally, like, that's what you're looking for is, all right, what does the foundation of a successful company look like, or a successful brand? And then how do I make it my own? How do I adapt that foundation to my dream? And so I think that's like the little moment that you have where you're able to build on somebody else's success.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not suggesting to copy Lazy Dog and have the same framework as Lazy Dog, but maybe look at Lazy Dog's framework and learn from, the struggles as well as the successes of the business. If that's really something that you're aspiring to be as the founder of a new restaurant chain that's big, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to start evaluating a few restaurants that are successful already and essentially mimicking that framework to an extent and then putting your own twist on it. So I think that's pretty valuable.
I mean, I've always said, like, that's one of my ultimate dreams would be to look around, 20 years from now and say, oh my gosh, look at all of these people that have started their own companies and are successful. And wow, they all came from Lazy Dog. It would be so cool. I mean, that's my ultimate dream. I would love at that point that I would have done something for the industry and for all of those people.
Yeah, you would see like dogs just running around in the patios of every restaurant. The last question that I did want to ask you is really, what's your biggest takeaway from, starting your own business, or really just one piece of advice that you would leave the listeners with?
I have to kind of just echo the things I've said so far. If you're thinking about opening up your own business, go work for a successful business that's doing something similar.
Sure.
I think that's just a huge deal. And then again, I think listening. I think listening is so underrated, but it is so important as an entrepreneur to listen to your guests, to listen to your teammates, listen to everybody around you, and process that information, and then make good decisions about your business. Sure. When you shut everybody out, you're really ignoring just incredibly valuable advice. And I have gotten some of the most incredible ideas from the least expecting people. I would have never thought that I could have learned as much from people in the restaurants, whether they're washing dishes or a busboy or a host. Sometimes it just absolutely blows your mind. And you go, God, that is such a good idea. But if you're not listening, you don't pick those up. So I think that's a huge piece of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone starts off somewhere, right? I mean, you started off by washing dishes too, if I'm not
absolutely.
So,
yep.
Who knows?
Yep. Everybody starts somewhere. I mean, it's already it's so much fun because we have several people that have started, with us at Lazy Dog, and now they own their own businesses and various businesses. Some got in, one's a chiropractor and has an entire, multiple offices now. And it's hilarious because you go into his offices and they're run like a restaurant. I mean, like there's hospitality and you're like, this is so neat. Like that's not normal. Normally you're just kind of stuck in a corner and wait for your appointment. Right. And instead he runs it like a restaurant. So, it's already happening, and it's really fun seeing that.
Yeah, I would imagine so, especially if you know for a fact that some of these employees of yours are going off and starting successful businesses of their own. That's pretty awesome, and that's ultimately what you want, as you mentioned, in 20 years from now, to see all of the people that you worked with be successful as well. So
absolutely. Yep.
On that note, Chris, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you, spending an hour here with me on a Friday afternoon.
Absolutely. My pleasure.